We're joined in studio this morning by Sport24 editor Garrin Lambley and chief writer Rob Houwing for our very last sports show, or at least with me as your host, to recap some of the weekend sporting results and talking points. Gents, good morning for the very last time. Don't be too sad, viewers. Rob, I know you're not feeling 100% after your maiden August, but well done in completing it.
Thank you very much.
You're going to do the honours this morning. Let's start with Super Rugby, just a quick rugby wrap. The South African sides, a bit wonky this weekend, all losing except for the Sharks, but then of course beating the Sunwolves, so they haven't really been tested. What are your thoughts? Any positives to take?
Not a great many this weekend, Nick. It was a fairly bleak weekend, a little bit of a reality check again. Just a reminder that we've still got a very, very long road to travel to vaguely match those New Zealand sides. We all know that the Blues are considered the worst of the New Zealand teams, but they're still a class act. I mean, there's still some great players in there. And the big upset, of course, was them beating the Lions in their own den, which was a big shake-up for the Lions because, you know, we know that they have massive aspirations of finally going all the way to the title after being runners-up twice in a row. So at this early stage of the season, I think it's quite a bad setback for them. In terms of their sort of eventual seeding hopes, you know, you assume that the Lions will be knockout material, but you obviously want that good seeding. What it also does is the defeat opened a little bit of a window for the other South African teams against the Lions in the South African conference, because I mean even the Jaguars got a win this weekend against the Waratahs, so they'll be feeling a little bit better about themselves. And some of the South African teams who've been gored on tour also will be feeling as if, you know, well, all is not lost yet. There is still a long road to go, and they've actually finished with their touring. The Stormers, you know, very disappointing again. Another loss on the road. They came back winless from the trip, so they're now, you know, one from four after just winning their opener at Newlands against the Jaguars, and absolutely bedeviled by injuries. They had a clash, a friendly fire incident where I think Kobus van Dijk and Chris van Zyl had a clash of heads. Chris van Zyl went off for a concussion test. We don't know what his state of readiness is. They're already looking really threadbare on the lock front. No Etzebeth at the moment. Peter Steph du Toit didn't play, although I think he might be back in the mix for their return match coming back this weekend against the Blues. SP Murray apparently went off holding his arm in a sort of sling position, so not a good sign there. So, you know, Robbie Fleck, you've got to feel a little bit sorry for him. He is dealing with almost a sort of a B-side in certain positions. So tough times. And the Bulls, the most frustrating of all, had a great opportunity to beat the Reds on the road. We know that Brisbane is a bogey ground for them and for so many other South African teams. They went 14-3 up, but those 14 points were the last they scored. I don't think they got any points in the remaining 55 minutes of that match, which was, you know, a savage blow to lose that game 2014 from a position where they really could have won it, and their tour only gets tougher now because they shift on to New Zealand in a couple of games there. So I'm afraid it wasn't a good weekend at all for the collective South African challenge.
Garrin, probably again a bit too early in the season to be sort of making any massive conclusions, but it does seem to be the sort of same old script. You know, the Lions sort of the choice South African side. I mean, I guess South Africa really needs the Sharks and the Bulls to step up, and everyone's waiting for John Mitchell's sort of new influence to sort of take root. But the New Zealand sides, of course, just being, you know, all out strong.
Absolutely. You know, you expect the New Zealand sides, I guess, to be strong, and they're not disappointing this year. As Rob mentioned, the Blues were the only team that hadn't won a match up until this weekend against the Lions. Obviously, the worst New Zealand team, if you like, on paper, beating the best South African team at Ellis Park at altitude. So that says a lot for the depth of New Zealand rugby. The Crusaders surprisingly went going down this weekend, thanks again to a number of injuries. But then again, the Hurricanes are going to be there or thereabouts come the final again this year. They're a real class outfit as well. And then the Highlanders, they've done absolutely nothing wrong as well. They were pretty impressive coming off a bye and beating the Stormers. And the Chiefs, I think, maybe the one team that might even finish bottom of the New Zealand Conference this year. They're again struggling with a couple of injuries, but they have at least won some matches. So going to be 5 strong New Zealand teams. Looking at Australia, they're the one conference that you weren't too sure what was going to happen this year because they're having lost the Force, but the Force players were pretty much divided up amongst the other Australian teams. But it seems like the Rebels, you know, who are currently top of the overall log, the only one of the 4 Australian teams not to have won the Super Rugby title, you know, they're the standout team at the moment. The Brumbies very, very disappointing. Waratahs coming off a fairly lucky win against the Stormers and then a draw against the the Sharks. They were pretty much thumped in Argentina this weekend. And then the Reds also, you're not too sure what to make of them. As Rob mentioned, I think the Bulls probably should have beaten them this weekend. So long road for the Australian teams. And then the South African teams, again, as you said, the Lions, the standout, despite their defeat this weekend. The Sharks picking up 5 points against the Sunwolves, but pretty much everyone is going to beat the Sunwolves, I think, and they haven't played any of the other South African teams. So the Sharks perhaps have 5 more points on the log than not that they deserve, but the others are all going to catch up once they get to play the Sunwolves. So, it looks a bit like same if you look at the overall log, despite this tournament obviously no longer being Super 18, back to Super 15. But, once the shake-up is done, after I think it's 18 weeks of rugby, I think that you'll see the cream rise to the top. All 5 New Zealand teams could well be in the top 8. And then the other 3 spots will be, fought out between the conference winners, obviously, of the other 2 conferences, and then maybe 1 or 2 others at most. So, yeah, it has that same look and feel about it this year again. But I guess that's Super Rugby for you.
Yeah.